Alright guys, guess this will be just going to be a short part 3, but it's like 7:45 right now. So, but I wanted to put something out because I told you guys I tried to do something every day. So I got the so part 3 of the engine rebuild for the 12 valve. So I got the connecting rod, the crankshaft cleaned. I haven't measured it yet, but I got the specs here and got some mics to do it. And then I got we got the connecting rods. Actually, one of the guys, he already checked the connecting rods for me, but I'll show you how we check those. They were in the parts washer, and he just went ahead and did them, that's what I told him to do, so I can't give him shit for doing it. But anyways, I'll show you how we do that as well. And they were all good. I don't know about the 5th one. I just, not going to use that one anyway. So 5 of the 6 are good. And I have a bunch of other ones to use. This engine is going to end up being, I don't know, something. Be one of mine likely, because I'm going to completely build it unless somebody wants to, buy it. I might do a bunch. But anyways, another story. So to start with here, what we're going to do is we're going to measure the crankshaft. I'm going to get you guys back up here. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this crank down. This is maybe something that most of you guys aren't going to do. If you don't have the tools, now don't get me wrong, you can buy the tools. If you want to do it, don't get me wrong. But doing it with a set of verniers, that gives you a set of verniers or a set of calipers, gives you an idea what size it is, not what size it is. Also, temperature makes a difference. If you take this thing, and you guys that are when it's cold, let's say below 0, whether it's Fahrenheit or Celsius, you will actually get shrinkage in these sizes. So always do stuff at room temperature, like 20 degrees or 70. Or it can be a little higher than that. I just prefer, 70, 75 degrees is the optimal temperature, I guess you would say. So more than anything, to start with, what you want to do, what I wanted to say about the calipers. The calipers are kind of a good indication that whether you can measure it and say, okay, the crankshaft, if you know the sizes of the crankshaft, which are relatively readily available, but you can say, okay, well, the crankshaft is ground 10-10, so it'll mean 10 off the main, 10 off the rod, or 20 and 10, or 30 and 10, or 30 and 10, depending on what's going on. Now, something I do, actually, what I'll do is I'll just write it on the crankshaft here. This one is, actually, I shouldn't say that. I haven't measured it yet, but I think it's still standard. But if you see this, now it'll be stamped on there. Guys aren't going to use marker. I just, for instance, just wanted to show you guys. So if you see that, so the T is going to be for throw, and then the M is going to be for main. That would mean this crank has been ground 10 thou on the rod and 20 thou on the main, is what that means. So if you see that punched in there on the crankshaft, whether it be 10-10 or 10-20 or 20-20, most of the time most guys will do the same on rod and main. But if you see that on the crankshaft, then like let's say this crankshaft, it was 30-30, because you always do it in the standard. I shouldn't say always, but we always do everything in standard. If you see it that it's 30-30 and there's any damage, the crankshaft's junk, because that's as far as you can go with 30 on these. And even 30, a lot of places don't like doing 30, and the bearings are hard to get. But so what we'll do here, get you guys in the frame, is we'll check. So the sizing on your crankshaft, on your rod sizing, your 2-inch 716 thou or to 17 thou, so plus or minus 1 thou. So what we'll do, and there is a little bit of a feel to this too. This crank's actually still warm from being in the parts washer, but so it's actually on the big side, so, or on the big side of the range. Really nice if you guys be able to see that. I'll put a picture of it in with my phone. I can't get the, I don't know if it's because of the light. Oh, no, I can't get it. I'll put a picture in my phone right now. So anyways, so you're right now, the rod, now you want to check all of your rods, or all of your throws, I should say, for your rods. This one, you're 17 thou, so you're 2-inch 717 thou. So it's on the big side of the spec. Now, that being said, we're gonna check a main, and then like I said, you're just gonna want to go through, you know, usually you'll check your companions, so you're gonna check so you're gonna go through, so you're gonna check your companions is like how I usually do it. So you'll check these two, and lots of times when you get this set, then you can basically just, you know, after you get your size, it's gonna be the same. So now you do these two. This is what I do anyway. And I roll it over. Make sure you don't drop it on top of your mics, because that you won't have a mic. And then there again, you just do the same thing, slide it over, flip her up. Now, I realize that a lot of guys aren't gonna have micrometers for doing this stuff, and that's fine. Oh, stick it in the oil hole, it doesn't work. And there is a bit of a feel to it. So what I recommend doing is there's standards for these to check to make sure they're, and we check them every day. To get the feel on the standard, if you're using these, so basically the standard is just a set puck kind of idea that goes in there, or it's actually a little rod, but you know, get the feel for where 0 is, and then you can know how much to squeeze on it. I use this all the time, so it's kind of second nature, I guess you would say to me. But now, so the rods are good, and the rods the throws are good for the rods. Now, this crankshaft, actually, I'm surprised because it had all kinds of weird bearing stuff. There's a little tiny pickup on that one, but that'll polish off. But basically, now if you're running if you take your fingernail, a dirty fingernail, and you run your finger across it, if you can catch an edge on it, you want to be taking it, like I personally, I recommend to have them at least polished no matter what, and because it takes the micro abrasion off of the material. I don't know if that's abrasion would be the right word for it, but it smoothens the surface off, because it looks smooth, but it's actually not perfectly smooth. And don't get me wrong, you can get away with not doing that. So basically the same idea for this. I'll show you the picture of the one mic. Now on your rod side, or on your main side, sorry, on your main side of your crankshaft, you're allowed 3-inch 267 and 2/10 to 3-inch 268 and 2/10. So we are right now, we're 3-inch 200 and yeah, like 68 between 67 and 68, so we're still in the spec anyway. So, and I don't know, I guess maybe I should show you guys, maybe I'll do that in a tool section, for you guys that don't know how to read micrometers. I'll do a video on that. For the guys that don't know how. I'm sure some of you guys do, and maybe some of you don't. Same with calipers and stuff. And maybe, yeah, anyways, I'll do a bunch of little videos on those too. Just so you guys, if you buy some of this stuff, if you don't know how to use it, then you'll get to know how to do it. But not that there again, it's pretty simple. But what we're going to do is we're just going to quickly... I'm just going to quickly check all of these. Something else too, actually, I should mention that. And this is something that I do after I polish, but what you want to do is you want to so I do it after polishing, but because we check them after we polish them too. So what you want to do, I can get there again, I get you guys in here close enough. Get my scuzzy fingerprints off here. So you can actually see a little bit of the kind of scuffing, but anyways, when you're measuring, you want to measure in 3 spots. This is how I do it. There again, lots of guys probably have different ways of doing it. This is how I do it. So the reason I do that is that because you can get barrel wear in it, where you will have a high spot and then a low spot, or vice versa. So that's why I recommend to measure in 3 spots. So what I do is I measure just in 1 spot to start with, make sure that the size is good, or close, and then after we polish it, then I measure in 3 spots. And I'll show doing that after I polish it, because I'll show you guys polishing it. It won't be tonight, but here in the next week or 2. Because I'm hoping that the pistons and the bearings will show up early next week, so I can actually start assembling the bottom end. But we still got a bunch of work to do before we get that far, so don't have to get ahead of ourselves here yet. So now, so we'll show big end of the rod first. Big end of the rod. So big end of rod. Now you have to measure this stuff a bunch of times. And really the reason that we're gonna measure, make sure you guys are in frame, make sure we're gonna measure, the reason that we're measuring it, so here's the rod. Now we're gonna measure the big end, and more than anything, your size on these Cummins rods, not all rods are the same, but Cummins rods, especially non-fractured style, usually they're good, but not always. And then the pin end likes to wear out on them. But you want to make sure, because there's a bunch of measurements you have to do. Like doing an engine properly is a lot of work. So what I do, put it in the wrong way. So I don't know, you guys, of course. So I don't know there again whether you guys are going to be able to see this or not. But basically you want to check, take you guys off there. So you want to put the orientation of your dial bore gauge. You want to check to make sure that this isn't shifted. So you're going to want to check like here and here, and then here and here, and then here and here. And now the reasoning for that is you want to make sure that the rod is still perfectly round, because that's usually what happens with a rod, is the rod goes out of round. Now also too, if you're putting ARP hardware in these, you want to get them checked after you do it. because if you don't, lots of times, Cummins rods aren't real bad for it, but they do sometimes go funky, not always. But most rods, I recommend check every rod. If you're putting ARP hardware in it, check it, because they go out of round. So if you stick that in there, it's really hard to do with two hands or with one hand. So you're 0, and now I've set this at 0, the size that I want already. 0 and 0. So that is telling me, which I already we already checked the rod, so I know they're good. But that's telling me that this hole is the same size and it's round all the way around. Now that is a big deal when you're talking a couple thou oil clearance. So when we get into doing more, when we get into assembling the motor, I'm going to go deeper into that tolerance stack and stuff. That is something that you need to be aware of when you're doing it. Personally, like what I do is I bolt everything together with the bearings and then use the dial bore gauge to check your size versus your crankshaft. It'll tell you your oil clearance. And then also too, then I use plastic gauge after I'm finished to verify that I didn't screw up any of the measurements. So now for the other side, this is the pin end. Now this is the side that will wear. Now depending on what you're doing with the engine, usually your clearance on these I think is 1 thou and a quarter. 1 thou to 1 thou and a quarter, I believe. That's just off the top of my head. We always just go off sizings. But now if you're doing a race engine, lots of times you're going to open these up a little bit to 1 thou and a half. I personally don't like big 1 thou and a half, but there again, it's really up to the guy that's building the engine giving you a warranty. So you need to talk to him about that. This is just what I do. So now this is, I've already set my size, and I'll probably show a video on doing that too later in a different video. But now, so that out of the way. These ones are a bit of a pain to do because they're not perfectly flat. So now I set this one at actual 0. So we're at like about 3/4 of 1 thou. About 3/4 of 1 thou. So I should do the other way around. There again. Yeah. And then just to verify our size here, just to make sure I didn't screw it up. Yeah. So we're 3/4 of 1 thou or so, maybe a touch more than that. These are, like I said, because these things are they're angle cut. It's really hard sometimes to get it just perfect in there, but it gives you an idea. As long as all of them are exactly the same. I wish I had one that was really bad. I was actually monkeying with this one before I was setting the gauge up just to see. I was hoping that I had one that was really bad, but I don't have one here that is like really worn out. Actually, maybe I shouldn't say that. So this one's like. Yeah, that one's good too. So that's how you check the pin end on these. And you can do this with a little dial bore gauge if you have one like that, like the big one that I have. You can buy a micro style one of those, and you can do the exact same thing. You just want to make sure that your clearance isn't too much. Like I said, 1 thou, 1 thou and a half is what we usually are shooting for. Depending on a race engine, sometimes it's different. If they're oil fed, they're different. Just depending on what you got on the go. So anyways, that's going to wrap up this one. Like I said, I don't want to get too long on the videos. So that was just checking. Hopefully what I'll do tomorrow probably. Oh, actually that's something I need to mention. These you have to torque. So doing 12 valve ones, there's actually 2 torque sequences. If you're torquing not in the vehicle, they want you to do 22, 44, 75 foot-pounds. And then if when you're doing it into the vehicle, I don't know why it's different, but I'm not that engineer. So you're 22, 44, and then 60 degrees. So, but if you're using airpipe hardware, then do what they tell you to do, not what manufacturer does. But like I said, I'll probably do a video on polishing the crank tomorrow, and then maybe measuring the block, because I never got the block in the parts washer today. So measuring the block, and then maybe we'll see, maybe I can do a video on boring it too. But we'll see how it goes. You know, doing this, like I said, I appreciate all the guys that are watching, all the comments, and all the new subscribers. It's awesome. But do bear with me. I am doing this after work, so you know, some of the processes take a little longer than 10 minutes. The checking of stuff and tearing stuff apart's not too bad, but you know, there is some length involved in doing some of this, so there's probably going to be maybe some little parts versus great big long videos, just because I have to do it in parts. I'm only doing a couple hours a night kind of idea, right? So anyways, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Comment down below if you got any comments, and thanks for watching.